Hello and welcome back to my craft room. It's time to start another thrift flip, a makeover of one of the tops I turfed out of my wardrobe a few weeks back now. So the first thrift flip I did was this one, which you might have seen. I'll leave a link to it just in case you haven't seen that one. So this is where I turned my husband's old shirt, some parts of a top that didn't fit properly, pieces from my fabric stash, and some embellishments from my bizarre scrap packs. Put them all together and turn them into a top that I think is much more me, much more fun. Really enjoyed doing that. It was really satisfying. It went ever so well. I'm really hoping I can do it again. So as I say, I'll leave a link to that one in case you haven't seen that. So today I've got this top, and you can see the main problem with this. I like the colour, but it's a bit boring. I like this whole kind of semi-fitted top with a loose skirty bit. I just find that quite a comfortable shape to wear. It's probably not particularly flattering, but you know, at the moment, the size and shape, I'm quite happy in these sort of tops. And as I carry on losing weight, they'll still kind of be alright. So, but you can see the main problem is that it doesn't. I've adjusted my mannequin. I've padded her out to a bit more reflect the size and shape I have now. And you can see the main reason is that it's not going to do up comfortably. Actually, I've shrunk a little bit and there isn't quite so much of a gap now when I try it on myself, but I'd rather have it a little bit on the large side than the other way around. So I needed to find a way to add some width in there, and also just to make the whole thing a bit more interesting. It's a nice shade of blue. It's actually a really nice fabric. I like the way it hangs. I like the way it feels. I think there's some synthetic in it, but it's not the kind of synthetic that irritates me to the point where I can't wear it. So I'm going to mix it together with some other things. I've got this top as well. I showed this one last time. Again, a top I have worn, doesn't really do me any favours. I can get into it, but it doesn't fit. It's not particularly flattering across here, and it's not kind of full enough here. It wants to either be straight and fitted, I think, or nice and full, and this is neither. I think with this one I'm going to keep the top of this one, possibly add some interest to the top of it, save some other bits from other shirts to go with, and I'm probably going to put this, it's got this flounce on the bottom, I'm going to take that flounce off and apply that directly to the altered top part, so it'll end up being a shorter top. That's going to be another day. So I can basically, I'm going to have this bit in the middle between the top section and the flounce. I've got all of that to use for this project, and they don't go exactly perfectly, but they're not bad. And I want to do like I did before and mix some kind of florals and some batik and stuff, and you know, just sort of do an eclectic mix of prints. I'm going to take you to the desk now and show you the other bits I've got to play with, and I've got a few different ideas of ways I could expand this top. There's this top, obviously. So this is the one we're gonna make over today, and I like this print. It's kind of all over. It's a bit busy. This top is just it's a bit much all over, but I do like the print, and I like the fabric, and I like some of the colours in it. I could bring out some of the other colours, so I could pick out this sort of apricot-y colour, the lemony colour there, that sort of sage green, the purple, the blue. I can bring out any of those colours in the other prints that I choose. So then I've got not a massive piece of this, but I think enough to do something with this beautiful batik. Love the batik because it feels lovely, especially once it's been washed a couple of times. It just feels and hangs beautifully, I think, and it's the same both sides, which is a bonus. And of course, same with this fabric, it's fine on both sides, and this, so that's, you know, that's a bonus. And then I've also got this just to throw in a different, now that is, I do struggle with mixing fabrics. I don't know how well my camera's going to, the camera's not being particularly helpful, because actually these flowers here are quite purpley, and to pick up the purple that is in this and this, there's also this sort of apricot-y colour here which picks up the apricot-y colour in there. There's black here which I haven't got in either of the other two, and if I look here, see, it goes all right with that one. So I think those fabrics will work together. If I need some bias cut facing, I've got another scrap from my Bazaar scrap packs, and one of these pieces that is cut on the bias, so it gives a bit of stretch, so I can use that for my binding. At the moment I've carefully saved this edge bit here in case I ever need that for anything, but I don't have to keep that. Got that, and I quite like the way that picks up that colour. Sort of goes quite nicely with this as well. So I like those all together. And then I've got a bit of another one of my husband's old shirts that I've been turning into a waistcoat. I've been patchworking a waistcoat with little silk scraps. That'll be coming soon, but it's a long project, that one. So I've got some pieces of this. You can see I've cut the tail of the shirt off there. So if I need any small pieces of quite a nice sort of sturdy fabric, this will fit in nicely because it doesn't show too well on the camera, but it's actually a pale kind of lilac colour. So I think all of those go in together quite nicely. And I've even got this little bit of also cut off the shirt. You can see I've trimmed a seam. It's actually a top stitched seam. So I can trim all these hairy bits off, stitch it if necessary, and I can use this to make little button loops possibly, or something like that. That's what I've got to play with. Now I'm going to go back to the dummy. I was a bit worried last time. I wasn't sure I was going to do another one of these flip videos because I've just found it very difficult to film, and I thought, I don't know if it's been particularly useful to people, but it got such a good response. I got so many lovely comments. Thank you ever so much, everybody who left nice comments, and the general feeling seemed to be that the way I did it, sort of showing what I was going to do on the mannequin, showing what I could on the desk, and then going away doing my stuff on the sewing machine and coming back, seemed to work. To add width, I thought of various different ways I could do it. One way that I keep coming back to is to use a little piece of this or one of the others in here, and put an extra little piece in there, a gathered piece, and then make button loops like I was just showing you. Do a kind of lace up sort of affair, with the contrast in print showing underneath, perhaps elasticated across the top, something like that. I'm not an expert on this, but I don't think it's going to work if I just, although that is where the gap shows, I can't just add all of the extra there. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's got to be added. I will need to put a piece in the back as well, but I might make it two narrower pieces, perhaps to make it look more deliberate. I'm not sure. But I've got another idea about that, making it a central panel and carrying that on down into the bottom part of the top. So what I was thinking was, imagine I've got a piece inside like that. I've extended this out with an extra piece in here, not as wide as that. And then I've got a little lacing across there. Maybe. I think I need to start cutting into it, because last time I found that I dithered, and I've done it this time. You think about it too long, you just don't get into it. Sometimes you just got to start cutting into it, and then it kind of makes itself up as it goes along. And the thing to remember is it's a top I can't wear. It's been sat in my wardrobe because I kind of like the basic shape of it and the fabric. I've just not got rid of it, but it's been sat there looking mournfully at me for a couple of years, so it's nothing lost. If it's a total cock up and it doesn't work at all, then this will be lovely fabric to add to my slow stitching stash. That's what I'm thinking. And all of these fabrics again will go back in my slow stitching stash. So my next thing is to start cutting things up. This top, I need to cut the top off and the bottom frill off, and just see how much I've got to play with then out of this sort of strip. I mean, this one, I was in two minds. What I might do is cut the whole button placket off, and possibly even all around the neck, and save those to apply to something else, become the beginnings of another top, possibly. It's actually seamed across there. The top is a nice basic shape. It's seamed across here and it's seamed underneath, but there's no, the sleeve is all one with the yoke, which is quite nice. My idea for the bottom, the easiest way to show you is to take this I'm going to cut what fabrics I've got into squares about this size, and the reason I've settled on that size is mainly because that's the smallest size square I've got kind of available to me to get enough of these squares out. If I fold this piece in quarters, that's the size I've got. So I started with this. So I'm going to square that off properly. I'll have a square about that size. I'll probably cut the point off, one of the points off, and then this will become a panel in the side, and it will drape down like that and make like a handkerchief point kind of thing. That's what I'm thinking. So I will then attach them here. I'm not sure at this stage whether they would also be gathered, so I need to see how much I've got to play with. I'll do like I did last time and do a lot of tacking before I machine stitch anything, because it's so much easier to take tacking apart. So that's the idea. And what I thought with the back, I've got quite a long piece of this. That's actually longer than, I fold this into squares. If I've got squares, I've got to think to myself, okay, I want 2 of these either side and maybe 1 in the back, or I could just have 2 of them at either side and save 1 long piece. I've just got to think what I've got to play with. But what I thought was, whichever fabric I end up using to make a panel in the back, and the panel in the back will only need to actually be about that wide, but if I do that, it's going to look stupid. I need to make it more wider to look deliberate. So I might need to cut more of the blue fabric out than I need to, just to make this look like I've done it on purpose, not just because I've got so fat that I needed to add a bit of extra width to the bodice. And I think I might want to have the strips in 3, 2 of these either side as well. But what I'd like to be able to do is to make the handkerchief piece panel in the bottom line up with the panel in the top, so it comes down like that. Can you see what I mean? As I say, the next thing is to stop procrastinating and get in there and cut everything apart. I'm not going to do all the cutting up with you. I know from my experience last time, I need to cut this right down. So I'm just going to show you the beginnings of the cutting, and then I'll come back and show you when I'm ready for the next stage. If at any point I've not explained what I'm doing properly or whatever, and you've got any questions, please do feel free to ask. So this is the top where my plan is to keep this top shape and add this ruffle along the bottom of it, and possibly I will add some more interest in the front, because I just think it's too busy. All this pattern is just too busy if you look at it, but just with a bit of calmness, I think it'll be a lot better. So I'll either use this, or I've also saved a few pieces of this, another husband's old shirt, and these have both got lilac-y mauvey colours in, so again these with it would sort of calm it down. So that's my plan for this. So I need to keep the top intact and I need to keep the ruffle intact. I'm going to cut them off first and put them to one side. I think I will leave the edge bit here on the top and on the ruffle, and I'll just liberate this middle section, because I might be able to use that edge wherever I can. If I can reuse the seams and the top stitching, the buttonholes and all of that, I will do. I notice this has been French seamed here, and I'm going to remember this time, because I wished I'd done it last time. I'm going to French seam where I can. Wherever the seams are straight, on this one I'm doing now, I'm going to French seam. It's such a tidy, neat, so you know all the raw edges are enclosed inside, and I think that's so much nicer a look than that. And I don't have a serger or anything to be able to do this finish anyway. I could zigzag it, but it never comes out quite so well. I could bind it, but that's a fag. So I think, yeah, where they're straight seams, I will just French seam them this time. So I'm just going to snip in here, and I think I'm just going to cut it, just give myself a little, sort of about less than a centimetre, 1/4 of an inch away from this, just so I could use it as a seam allowance. But this is where, yeah, it's if you find yourself wanting to start a project like this and you keep digging and you don't know where to start, I would say jump in, start cutting things up, because once you've cut them up, then you can start, you can see what you've got to deal with. You can, if you haven't got a mannequin, try it on yourself, or see if you can get a friend to be a mannequin for you. And you can start draping things and playing around with different arrangements. But if you don't cut in and you keep trying to just think it all through in your head, you'll never get started, in my experience anyway. Okay, so I'm going to snip through all of these. I'm going to take all of these apart, not fully apart, but as apart as I want to, and then I'll be back. I ended up with a smaller strip of this than I thought I would, so if I want to get a square shape out of this, I'm either going to have to make all of the squares smaller than I thought, because that's the biggest square I could get out of this, or I could put 2 pieces of this together. I could make this long strip into 2 squares maybe. So I'll have to think about that in a minute. And now I'm moving on to this. I could actually just unpick that stitching, but I'm far too lazy. What I'm trying to do is leave this all gathered, because if I decide I want to use it as a gathered skirt on a different top, it will save me having to do all the gathering palaver again. It's already done. I'm just going to cut the whole top off now at the waist. I thought about maybe cutting it up here as well, or down the shoulder. Might need to cut it there to set a piece in here, but I'll wait and see. I'll just detach it first and see where I am. Okay, I've had a bit of a think through. And what I would like to aim at, although these things have a way of changing as you go along, is to create, in effect, a striped fabric where each of these stripes will only end up, that's about 5 centimetres wide. I need to make sure I leave enough to make the squares for the handkerchief points as well. I'm probably going to have to cut into, I've ended up with, this is how the skirt of the top has ended up, but I think I'm going to have to use some of it. I didn't think about that. I'm going to have to use some of this to make the new bottom as well. What I'd like to do is end up with a stripe of this fabric, and this one, and this one, and then a stripe of this one, and then this one, and then perhaps a flounce of this one on the end, or just a turn back cuff, something like that. So the stripe carries on all the way across, and I want it to carry on over the back, and then the whole thing will look deliberate. And if I keep repeating those fabrics, it should, I think the whole thing will look more cohesive once I've done. So that is my plan I've got now. And I think I need to make the bodice first, and then make the skirt to fit. I did want to try and save this because I love this nice neat little hem, but I think that's going to have to go because I've got to join all these new pieces in, and I will have to open the seam up down the top here. So the next step is to cut these button plackets off, because I'll create loops there. I think I'm going to start with 5 centimetre strips of the fabric. No, a little bit more to allow for, because I want a French seam, don't I? So I need enough for the panels as well, and I really want to do the handkerchief. I really want to do the handkerchief point style. But in an ideal world, what I want to do is carry on, have the handkerchief point fit the stripe, but I don't know if that's going to happen in practice. This is all I've got of this fabric, so I'll get 3 square, 2 squares and 4 long strips. This fabric I'm going to have to join 2 pieces to get each of my handkerchief squares. Okay, so I've got quite a bit of working out to do. I'm going to finish cutting up the top as I just described, cut my strips, and hopefully my squares as well, work it all out in my head, and then when I'm a bit more sorted, I'll come back and show you the next stage. Right, I've cut all the neckline off and the front, and I've changed my mind. What I'm gonna do is I've just folded it in half there just to make sure I've got everything lined up, because it's a bit crooked across here, and that's as straight as it needs to be. But I think the way I'm going to do this is to open it, just cut away the underarm seam as close as I can, because I don't want to lose too much width there. and open it out that way. I think that's going to be the easiest way to do this. And then when I've got the extra stripes of the contrasting fabrics stitched in, I can stitch it back together again. So I keep everything. I even keep these kind of things because I love bits like this. Oops. To add texture to my slow stitching, so that'll all go in my little pot there. Now I'm going to start cutting my lines where I'm going to put the inserts in. So because I've cut the side seams away, if I want to put a line of extra fabric down here, I can open it out and do it all in one go, maybe. Although because it's seamed across there, maybe not. Yeah, so that might have been a daft idea. Maybe I should have just left those attached. I don't know. Anyway, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So first thing is to make a line right down the centre back. Of course, putting these extra panels in does mean that it still looks crooked there, look, doesn't it? Look, it still looks crooked. I think I need to put it on my big table. Okay, I'm just going to cut this down the middle. That is going to become my left front. So I want another piece that will just, I'll be letting one piece in the back here, so I need a strip for that. Then I want a piece that's going to be gathered to go underneath the front. This will get turned under and top stitched. I need to cut a wider panel for the front, so it's going to be about that long to allow for my seam allowance here, hem there, and extra wide to allow, twice as wide as it needs to be to allow for it to be gathered up, possibly with a piece of elastic at the top. I'll see how that goes. Then I'm going to cut another slit here that will just finish at the front, and I want it about the same place on the back, and then one more piece right the way down here that will carry on over to the back. So I want all of them to appear to wrap all the way around. I'll cut all the lines on this half and then I'll match it up on the other half, and then I'll cut my slits of my strips of fabric and tack them all together. And I'm hoping at that stage it'll end up way bigger than it needs to be, because I've not actually cut away any of this fabric except for where I've cut the seam away there and the front plackets away. That's the plan. I'll come back when I've got those tacked together so I can show you what I mean. I've ended up going a step further to try and make all the pieces match up. I ended up cutting all the seams off, all the edges off, and I've just ended up with pieces. I'm going to end up more or less remaking this top from scratch. Never mind, that's fine. So now I want, I'm going to have my contrast fabric there. I want one here, and another one there. So I'm just going to eyeball this. I've got both thicknesses of the front together, and I'm just going to go for it. Eek! Let's just do it. Let's just do it. And then one here. Oops, a bit crooked. Never mind, be fine. So I'm now going to put strips of the contrasting fabric in there and pin all of that together and do the same thing on the back pieces, and then we'll see where we are. This is where I've got to now. I've put the strips of print fabric in between to extend this out. So this is what it looks like from the right side. I've decided that I think because I had to cut away the seams here and here, that's not going to be, by the time I've seamed it together again now, I don't think that's going to be enough to be a comfortable size for my sleeve. And because this is now going to be quite long anyway, what I'm going to do is lose this last little section of sleeve, and I can reuse that little section to make a facing here for the front. So this is what I cut off of the neckline. I think I can tidy up and reuse this. So this will become my loops now, my button loops. Can't do it to save my life. So those will get sandwiched in between these two layers to make a nice neat. I don't think they're probably not going to be functional buttons, but I'm going to leave my options open at the moment. I think the whole thing is going to be big enough to just slip over the top of my head kind of thing without having to actually undo it, but we'll reserve judgment on that. And then underneath, so that will be the same on both sides. With I'm calling them button loops, but with like a lacing in between. And this will be either pleated or elasticated. I'll have to play that here as I go along, like that, and then the other half of the front will come here. Hope that's all kind of making sense. I've pinned them together in such a way that for each seam, one half, and I've gone for the blue half every time. The seam allowance on the blue fabric is half the amount of the seam allowance for the print fabric. So that I can do a flat fill seam later on. So I'll seam them together there, then I'll press them flat, and I actually will get my iron out. And I think this came into my head more because I've been doing the pajogi, so it's kind of a similar, like a machined version of the same thing. Then I can press this bigger seam allowance over the top of the smaller seam allowance like that, and then turn the whole lot that way and top stitch it. So from both sides I'll have a nice neat finish. I've already done the other front. I've got to take that extra sleeve bit off it. Where's it gone? Here it is. I've done the other front to match, and I've done the back as well. So I think I need to go away and machine all of this now. I've sort of roughly pinned the back and the two fronts together to make sure they will kind of go over my head and everything. The neckline is going to be very wide, and I think that'll look okay. If needs be, I could do like a fake kind of inside strap in this same fabric as this. I think that could look quite nice, and I think it's going to be another one of those things where the whole problem solving process leads to creative solutions along the way. It gives me little ideas I wouldn't have thought of otherwise. So yeah, the next step is to go through and seam all of these pieces. Once that's done and it's all nice and secure and all pressed and everything, then I'll trim the shape up and start putting the fronts and backs together. What I want to do is make sure that these strips match up, so it looks as if they continue all the way around. So I might need to adjust this a little bit. I'll probably do both the fronts first, then check them and trim them and everything, then check them against the back to make sure. I don't need to slightly adjust this so that they line up nicely. If they're a bit off, I don't mind, but I'd like them to be more or less lined up. Right, I have stitched all of those seams. I ended up just going a little bit inside the tacking line each time. I kind of used the edge of the blue fabric as my guide, lined up my machine foot along with that. it will have made the whole thing just slightly narrower, which I think is a good thing. And then I've pressed it flat. This is what it looks like on the other side, so you can see how it's coming together. Hopefully going to end up looking like a deliberate design feature. Then what I've done is on the wrong side, where I had those seams pressed flat like that, I've then pressed the bigger seam allowance over the smaller seam allowance, and then press the whole thing down like that. So if I show you, I might show a bit better on this one. So there it is, press flat, I press this one over that one, and then press the whole thing down like that, and then I will top stitch from the other side using this seam as the guide. Well, I hope I can do better top stitching than I did on my last effort. So I need to do that now on both these pieces. Take up my tacking, cut all my ends off, trim off all this excess and neaten up the shape, and then I'm gonna and match it up with the back piece just to make sure I get the stripes as near the same width as I can. This is the back piece. I can't remember where I got to in the last clip. I've pressed all the seams down so that I can do a top stitching, so that it's all, there's no raw edges, front or back. You could almost wear it inside out at this point. That's the back. These are the fronts, and I've tidied them all up. So that's right sides. So they will go together there at the shoulder seams and the underarm seam. I'm going to use the pieces that I trimmed off the sleeve to make facings for this bit. I'll probably put it together like that. Take my little loops, put the loops on the inside, stitch down, and then when I turn it back around like that, the loop will be sticking out there. I'll show you that when I come to it. That's the idea I've got at the minute. Seem to have got a bit of a hump there going on. I need to trim that off. I thought I'd sorted all these little weirdnesses. Okay, yeah, I just want to trim that off straight. Oh, and I should mention that the reason I've just done a tacking stitch down here is I've decided I'm going to do a hand stitching down here. Instead of doing a machine to top stitch, I'm going to do a hand stitching down all of these lines, because I think that would be a nice little detail and I will enjoy doing it. So it'll either just be straight stitching, or I might do a bit of a fly stitch down there. Could look quite cute, I think, or a mixture of stitches like I did on that other top. I'll see how I feel when I get to it, and I'll use all the different colours of thread to pick up the colours in the different fabrics. A little bit weirdness there. See, I just sort of hand tacked it just to keep those seams nice and flat, and then when I put this together, I can sit tonight and do the hand stitching. I will really enjoy that. So now I'm going to pin the fronts and backs together. They've ended up exactly the same size, which is really good, but I don't think I definitely haven't managed to line up the stripes too well. I'll see how I feel about it when I'm done. If it's bothering me, I could put an extra piece over the top, a decorative piece of fabric or something there, but hopefully it won't bother me too much. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'll stitch the two shoulder seams and the two underarm seams. I'll have to bind the seam or something because this is going to fray otherwise. I could try just zigzagging it. I haven't probably got enough width here to do a flat felled seam or a French seam really. I think I would just do a normal 1/4 inch seam, zigzag it for the time being, and then later on I might just do a binding on it to finish it really nicely. Time for another update, show you where I'm at. So the fronts and backs are all stitched together. I've trimmed these seams down a little bit, and I'm going to hand finish the seams later, either by doing some decorative top stitching, or I'll blanket stitch along the edge, or I'll bind the edge, or whatever. What I really want to do now is get the neckline right before this frays out any further, because it is quite frayy, some of this fabric. Oh yeah, and under here I will need, I've left it just as is for now, until I'm ready to finish it, because as I say, it's fraying quite quickly. But when I'm ready, what I shall do is clip into the curve, so that it will, because at the moment if I try turning it inside the right way out, it's kind of all gathery, you know. I need to clip the curve so that it will turn out nicely, and once I've clipped the curves I will do a bias binding around the edge as well, just to finish it all off. So what I want to do now is get this to the point, do the last little bit of machining so I can take the hand stitching downstairs to do this evening. I want to bind this neckline. Now I've brought, the neckline is very wide. It's going to be almost kind of verging on off shoulder, so I think what I will end up doing is take some leftovers of this fabric, create kind of faux straps. I'll have to pin it on myself when I'm actually wearing it, some kind of faux straps, as if there's a top underneath to hide my bra strap, which will otherwise show. And of course I've still got that middle piece. In fact, I think that piece I grabbed then is the middle piece that will be gathered here to look like a faux top underneath. So I'll line up with the back piece with the lacing across here. What I've done is I've just scooped the neckline in a little more than it was here. So I've pinned that, and then I'll carry on all the way around the neckline just with a little 1/4 inch turn. And I need to just bias bind that to keep it all tidy. I've still got to do the facing here and add the loops. But I think if I can just get this neck binding sorted now, that would be great. So what I've done is I've got some of this stuff. This is another one of those scraps from the Bazaar scrap packs, which is all cut on the bias. So I think I said, like last time I did one of these, that's straight across the grain. You can see the grain of the fabric running horizontal and vertical. This piece had been cut so it was on the bias, so it's got a stretch to it. So I've just cut across, where did I go? Right across there to give myself a long piece. And I could now, there are little gadgets you can get that you feed the strip of fabric through and it automatically folds it into this bias shape, and I could also iron it to do that. So I might do that in a minute, but essentially what I'm going to do, I will just pin this all around. I probably need to just trim here first and then tack it all around. Once I've machined it all around the edge like that, then when I turn it over to the back, I will want to hand stitch, just whip stitch along there, just do a little tiny, as invisible as possible hand stitch. I like that this fabric, although it will be going to the inside, I will see it and will be aware of it, and it's nice that it picks up that colour in there. I also there was a frill along the edge of this piece, you might remember, so I've cut that off with a little bit of spare because I might use it to trim the kind of faux, the neckline of the faux underneath top, just to give it a little bit of interest. I don't know, I'll think about that later. At least it's there if I want to. So that's where I'm at the moment, and the other thing I'll do this evening is all of this hand top stitching. I'll probably just do straight stitching down here, but then I might add some Y stitching and stuff later on. I also thought, to add a bit of interest, these were the seams that I cut off of the original top, and I quite like the idea. I just love the texture of them, so I might run some of them down these panels as well, just for a bit of interest. I'm going to get this binding on now before I go downstairs. When I come back in the morning, hopefully that'll all be on and I've got this top stitching done, and then I'm ready to start adding my handkerchief panels at the bottom. So it's starting to really take shape now. I'm quite excited to get this finished. It will have taken a good couple of days work altogether, but hopefully it'll be worth it. Okay, I'll see you in the morning. Just thought it was worth mentioning this in case anybody hasn't done this before. So I need to join a new piece of the binding, so I've cut it with the grain of the fabric, i.e. diagonally, and then I've cut the piece I'm going to join diagonally as well. But you don't do what you think you might and join them that way, because if you do, it will come out at right angles. What you have to do is put them opposite ways around like this, so it's at right angles, and just overlap the points a little bit like that, then stitch it together. Probably with a machine would be better, but I'm just going to quickly do this to show you. And now when you open it up, it's carrying on in a straight line. So yeah, just thought it's worth mentioning that in case anybody's not done that before. And while I'm at it, I might as well show what I've done here. So I'm just pinning this all the way around, gently curving it round to follow the line of the neckline. And as I say, because it's cut on the bias, it's got that stretch in it, so it will do that. And then I will stitch all this on. I'll probably just run around this on the machine, and then I'll turn this to the inside and finish it there with a little overstitch, a little neat stitch. So this will all be on the inside. You won't actually see it, but if I do see glimpses of it, as I say, I like that the colour is coordinating. You can make a bias binding, you know, visible, of course. I could just wrap it around the edge like that and fix it like that and have a little coordinating edge. I might think about that once I've got this bit all on and I've pressed the binding. I might just have a think about whether I want to have an edging like that. It would be quite nice, I suppose. I'll decide about that later, and you'll find out any second now. Time for another update. So this is where I've got to now. I did quite a lot of hand stitching last night. I'll give you a bit of a close-up look in a minute, but you can see now how the top is shaping up. I've still got that gap down the front, even though I thought I'd have plenty. But of course, what I didn't take into account is the fact that I cut the seams away when I took it apart, which I hadn't allowed for in the first place. But that's good, because I've still got this piece to go in the front, which I will probably pleat or gather. And then I'm going to put my loops and lace across there. So I will come back and do that. I'm going to finish the stitching tonight. Didn't get it all done last night, I thought I would, but it's going to be plenty big enough. This dummy is actually now a little bit bigger than I am in real life, so that's good. Great thing is that because I've now got all these other strips going all the way round, this strip in the front is going to look deliberate rather than just I had to put an extra piece in because I got fat, you know. So I think also it's a little bit short because again I had to cut that seam away. So what I'm thinking I'll do, I'm also going to cut a long strip from the skirt part, which will go all around here like that, a bit like I did with that other top. So that will be top stitched, top and bottom, and then the skirt part, the handkerchief part, will come out from underneath. I can give you a better look at how I've done this. So this is where I've done the bias binding on the I can go now. I've done the bias binding on the inside, and I did just attach that with a neat little overstitch, but then I ended up doing some Y-stitch down here just for the look of it, really. And so, you know, obviously that you can see that on the back, but I don't care. I still, yeah, I quite like the look of it, so that won't bother me. And then I've started doing straight stitches down here, and at the moment I can't decide. I think I'm going to do another line of stitching, so I'll have 3 on each side of these panels. But I was going to bring in all the other colours as well, and at the moment I can't decide whether to stick with this blue for all of the straight stitching, so it'll just be more texture, or do I want to introduce some of the other colours, and do I want to just cover the whole of these plain blue panels with stitching, bringing in all of the other colours, which will help to blend it with these pattern pieces. So what I think I'll have to do is actually do the stitching in 2 or 3 different ways, and then decide which one I like the look of the best. So it's going to mean a lot of work that I'll do and then probably undo again, but hey ho, so it goes sometimes. I was going to do a facing on the sleeve, but now at the moment I'm kind of thinking I can just do a little narrow turned up hem instead. I think that'll be fine. Well, I did some experimenting last night, and I've ended up thinking that I'm just going to go nuts and do straight stitching right across all of these plain blue panels. One thing I did think is that although I used this pale peachy colour next to the pieces with this print in, because I thought it coordinated well, and I used this pale lilac-y colour next to these two to pick up the lilac-y colour. In practice, when you've just got the line of stitching, it looks they both kind of look pretty much the same when they look a bit too light. They just look like white there. So what I've done now is pick out this instead, which is a bit darker, but I think when you've just got a line of stitching, it will show up better. And I'll use more of this, which I've used around the neckline, and I've got this deeper purple. I've got plenty more of that as well. So it will be a combination of, I'll leave out the lighter colours. Well, they might come in again, but yeah. But it'll be mainly a combination of these. So, but that's going to take me a lot longer, and that's another evening job. While I'm up here in my craft room near the machine, there's a couple of other bits I can get done, because I can carry on and still do the stitching after I've done these. So this is getting this front panel sorted out, is the next job, I think. This is the piece I cut off the original neckline, so I've trimmed back. You can see there. I just cut it off with a little bit to spare, if you remember, in case I wanted to use that as a seam allowance, but I don't. So I've just cut off that surplus. I've literally gone along with a pair of scissors and just carefully cut off those raw edges, but leaving the stitched part all intact, because I might as well use what they've already done. And I decided I wanted 4 loops, which works out really well, because if I cut this in half, half again and half again, I'll end up with 8 pieces, 4 for each side. And just having a quick tester, I can see that they will make a perfect size loop with enough overhang to enclose it in the seam. So let's do that first. It would have taken me ages to make these little strips to use for the loops, so might as well use the work that's already been done. Had it not worked out that they were each quite long enough, I'd have decided to have 3 down each side rather than 4. And then I've got this piece, which was cut off the end of one of the sleeves, and I think this will be just about wide enough if I cut it in half lengthwise. Not exactly straight, it's okay, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. Next thing is to fold each of these little loops. I've got to decide if I want it that way, and I'm just going to do just a little basting stitch. I'll go a couple of times across each one, carry on down a couple of times across the next one, just to hold all of them in shape before I put this top piece on. 4 on that side, 4 on that side, and just tack them into place first. I'll be back when I'm ready for the next day. Pin them in place, more or less evenly spaced. And then the next thing will be to take one of my little strips, which I've now lost. Oh, here we go. So I'm just leaving myself an extra bit of seam allowance here. And then I'll go back to pins now. And match up these edges here. Pin this all the way down, matching up the edges. I'm hoping I can run along this with my machine, but I'm not sure if it's going to like that thickness there, so we'll see. I might have to hand do it in the end. Oh, anybody would think I'd planned that. Look, it's come to exactly they match up exactly there, with that little bit of over, about a centimetre or so seam allowance there. I've stitched these together now with just a little centimetre or say 1/4 inch seam allowance. Trim these down. It turned out my machine was quite happy to go over these lumpy bits. I went quite slowly, didn't go full pelt at it, but it seemed to be absolutely fine. And then I turned this back like this, turned this little, where I left the little seam allowance at the top, I've just turned that under. You can see where this bit is. I'm just turning it under there like that, so that'll all be tucked away, and then I will stitch along here. I'll turn an edge under here, and I will turn this back and attach it there where there's I'll turn it back far enough so that it comes to where there's this turn under here, so that I can attach it there without that showing, just with a whip stitch, without that showing on the right side. And then the whole lot's going to get the straight stitch treatment anyway, so it'll help to hold it all together. So here's one that I've got all clipped up ready to go. Made a bit of a boo-boo there. I caught in some of the fabric at the back. You can see there's a bit of a funny thing going on, but I've decided it's not going to show, so I'm not going to worry about it. But yeah, that's how it'll look there. So there won't be any raw edges showing anyway. It'll all be quite neat and tidy. So I'm going to do all of that bit by hand. I've then got this piece that I'm going to use for my little extra panel in the front. It's just and then the whole lot will be attached to a waistband, which is just going to be a strip, just a straight strip. What I'll probably do is pleat it like this. Okay, I'll rearrange it so that that's a bit more even. I'll baste that. I'll do the same at the bottom, and then I'll use this, or possibly a bit of one of the other fabrics, I don't know, to fold over the top and enclose the whole thing like that. I think that's what I'll do. Once I've got that pleated and I've got the right length going that way and I'm happy with that, so this is the wrong side facing towards me now, I'm going to turn it under that way and attach it here. And again, the attaching can just be done with some of this visible top stitching, hand top stitching. Because what I want is, I don't want to attach these so they're just seamed like that. I want this one to I don't know how to explain what I mean. I want there to be a little bit of overlap here, so that this looks like it's a separate thing and this is underneath. Time for another update at last. I say at last because it's actually taken me 3 evenings to do all of the hand stitching on the top part of this. And in fact, I'm not quite done because I still want to cover these sections with just straight stitching, the same as on the front. But I've decided I'm just so itching to move on and get this properly put together. So I've got this bit just pinned here. That's going to be stitched down there, and I've still got to decide on a cord or whatever to go across, whether I make a cord out of some of the leftover fabrics, reuse the piece from around the collar. Or did I use that? I might have used that for these loops. I can't remember now. Or just find some ribbon in my stuff, whatever. I'll decide about that later. I was going to do a waistband there, but I've decided I'm going to just continue it down. And it's not going to be gathered into the yoke this time. It's just going to be more of a smooth flare out. And because I'm going to do these squares to create handkerchief points, it will naturally just flare out. Now I've hit a bit of a quandary, so I haven't got quite enough fabric to cut all of the squares. Well, I have, but only if I cut into the skirt of this. So the idea is that I'll use squares like this. Some of them where I've got smaller pieces left, I've just cut the squares in half, and then I will put them together with a half square of the neighbouring colour. So I've only got full squares at the front, the sides and the back. My intention was to carry the squares on down from the whichever print is in the yoke, and then I thought the only way I've got enough of the blue is if I cut into this, because I've only got small pieces left now, really small pieces, except for the skirt part of the original top, which I have at the moment kept whole, thinking I would turn it into something else. So I'll have to cut. I've got enough to cut the pieces I need to do all of this, but I did want to keep it whole in case I wanted to use that for another top. So then I thought I could use another piece. I've got this beautiful piece of batik here. Somebody sent me, I can't remember, one of my lovely online friends sent me in amongst a batch of beautiful fabric, sent me this piece of batik, and you know how much I love the batik in these tops. I've used batik here as well. It's lovely because I like how fine it is. I like that you can see that it looks the same both sides, and once it's been washed a couple of times it'll go nice and floppy like the rest of this. So all of the fabrics that I've used look nice front and back. So I did think I could cut some squares of this. The strip happens to be about the right width to make squares. And I did think it would fit in okay. So then I've put these, the last two, these are the biggest pieces I've got left apart from the skirt. So they're not big enough to do, but I just put them there to see what I thought. And I really just like the idea of the stripe of colour continuing down. I just think I just like the design of it, and I think it'll be more flattering to have that line going all the way down rather than sort of cut me in half across the middle. That's my theory. So I'm going to have to cut into the skirt. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take all of these pieces and do a narrow hem around them. What I'll do is I'll take you to the desk now, give you a close-up look at the top. There we go. This gives you a better look at what I've done. So this still needs to be stitched on in the same way as I've done that one on this side. I might, before I permanently stitch that, I will just try it again, because I could potentially leave this open with just a couple of poppers inside. So if I find it is a bit of a squeeze to just put it, I'm thinking it's going to be big enough I can put it on over my head. If that's a bit of a problem, I could leave that open with poppers. So I will cut half triangles out of the blue fabric, and then where I've got the half triangles, I will join them together first with a flat fell seam or a French seam, so that all the raw edges are enclosed. Hem them on the bottom, what will become the bottom points. So I end up with a whole load of squares this size, and then I'll join them all together, and I'll have to work out how far up, because I will end up cutting off those top points. Obviously the pieces will get kept, and so what I need to do is cut it off to the right point so that it fits with the seam allowance, so that it fits the section it's going to marry up with, and that could take a little bit of finagling. So yeah, I might need to fiddle around a bit to make, because I would really like these to line up properly. I suppose if they're not lining up exactly, it's not the end of the world, but I would like them to line up exactly if I can. So that's going to take a bit of trial and error. But I think the first thing is to get the triangle stitched together so I've got a full squares. All I'm going to do then is join, when I've made the triangles into squares, I will join the squares together. Other little things here, I've just these seams that I think we would call that a flat fell seam. I finished it off by hand, and I've done chain stitching on the edges, and then lines and lines of straight stitching on the back. I've still got all the filling in to do, but I've done this one line of straight stitching because that's what's keeping this inside seam down, so there aren't any raw edges anywhere. And I mean, it definitely looks hand stitched, but I don't mind that. It's all securely hand stitched, and there are no raw edges anywhere now. So I thought I'd come back and show you exactly how I'm going about doing this. So to join these two triangles, I've just the narrowest seam I could manage down there, trimmed it all up, cut off any excess here, tidied everything up, just going about, I don't know, 2 or 3 millimeters, a couple of 1/8 of an inch close to the seam. And then just thought, in case anybody's not done a French seam before, they're so easy, it makes such a lovely neat finish. If there was a right and a wrong side to these fabrics, which luckily there isn't with these, you'd put the wrong sides together first, do the seam, trim it, open it up. This is now the right sides would be facing me now, so now I'm going to put right sides together. Just press that seam out. I've done another line of stitching along here, so what I've ended up with is this. So now when I open it up, that's how it looks. And on the inside, there is a seam, but there are no raw edges. The other thing I could have done is a flat filled seam, and I could still press this flat and do a top stitch along here. I'll see how it presses out. If this fabric insists on keep doing what it's doing now and kind of rolling up like that, then I will top stitch to keep that in place. It can be a bit difficult when you've got two different kinds of fabrics interacting together. So now I'm going to go through, finish that last one, trim all of these up, and back to make a nice square again, because you can see now it's a bit funny like this, so I'll probably just, depending on which way I press it, it seems to want to go that way, I'll end up cutting that off to square it all up. Then I'll make sure that these ones which are whole squares, they'll now be a bit bigger because they haven't been seamed. You can see I've lost quite a bit of the size there, so I'll just trim them up so those squares are the same size as well. And then I'm ready for the next stage where I'll be cutting off the top. So for each one, I mean, I know with some of them there are little funny blips in the fabric in parts, but I can't find a single example now where there was just a little bit of a seam in there or something, like here. So it's a bit of a seam from the original garment in there, so I would probably choose with this one, I'll cut that one, I'll cut that part off. I've actually ended up with the seam on the outside there, so if that does show, that's really going to show. Actually, I don't mind that. I don't mind that it being obvious that this garment has had a previous life. Eventually I will be cutting those points off, so I'll end up with one long piece to make the kind of skirt, as it were, of my top. It'll have these points. Well, it was a bit of a battle getting all of this skirt bit to fit, and for the sections to sort of line up, and you can see in places they don't quite, but I think they're going to be good enough for me. I have started top stitching around here where I've attached the skirt, just to make sure it all carries on and lies nice and flat. So I just need to finish that a minute. How much further have I got to go? I think I thought I'd finished, but I've only done the one half. I still need to do the hem, but that's going to take ages, and I haven't quite decided how I'm going to do it, because it's going to be a little bit tricky to make it a neat hem and keep the points, and I don't want too bulky of a hem so that it all sort of sticks out. So I think I'm just going to turn it over once and machine it, and then do another hand top stitch to stop it fraying out. But that is going to take me quite a while, and I've already been filming this video over the course of several days, so I feel like I want to finish it up. So what I'm going to do is finish the other bits, try it on and show you how it looks, and then I'll carry on with the hem in my own time. The other thing I want to finish is the sleeves, and I was going to just turn up a hem, but then I remembered I'd got this bit cut off the top of the skirt of the original top, or one of the original tops. So what I've done is I've fringed the edge out, and I'm just going to use this. Luckily I cut the piece I had in half, and it was almost exactly right to edge the sleeves, so I'm going to just stitch that on there, join it underneath where it won't show, and that'll be the edge of the sleeve. I think that looked quite pretty. And then I might need to do another line of hand stitching along here to stop this fraying away any further as I wash the top and things, but again, that's going to have to be done. I want to get this video finished and out today now, and it's going to take me quite a while to edit it as well. So I'm going to go to the machine now, stitch this on. I need to just thread up. Now this piece is from one of the original tops that I used on my first flip, you might have seen a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to cut it in half. I don't think it needs to be that long. And I think, although it's a completely different fabric, I think it will work. Tie the beads that were originally on it back on and leave it dangling down there, and then when I've done all of that, I'll try it on and come back and show you and finish this blinking video. Okay, I'm all done. I'm very happy with it. Well, I'm done enough that I'm ready to show you. I've still got some hand stitched finishing details to do, but I'm all ready to give you a twirl, and I'm very happy with it. Let's get this out of the way so I can. Yeah, very pleased. It's a little bit shorter than I intended it to be, but that's quite nice. It's light and airy, and nice for the summer. If you wanted to do a similar thing and make it longer, you just need to start with these squares for the handkerchief points. Need to be longer. Mine only ended up about a foot long, 30 centimetres long, if that. So you want them to be at least 18 inches to make a sort of slightly longer top. But I quite like this. So this was the original blue at the top. This was that other top, parts of that other top that I used. Some fabric from my stash, lovely print and the batik. The tie came from that other first top that I flipped. It is very off the shoulder, but I've decided to embrace that, and I think I might do kind of fake integral straps so that it'll look like I've got pretty bra straps basically. I mean, maybe when I'm at home alone there might not be any bra straps, but if I'm going out there definitely need to be bra straps. So yeah, I'm really pleased with that. Let's try and get something from a thumbnail. What am I going to do from a thumbnail? Trying to get it all in. I think that'll do. Maybe I can manage to cut that out. Here we go. That'll do it. I reckon I can cut round that. Really happy with how these fringed kind of edges to the sleeves worked. That was just a last minute fit of inspiration. I've got a bit of a summer cold going on now. I'm losing my voice. Yeah, I definitely prefer the dangles going down this way. I think it just seems to work better for me. Yeah, really happy with it. Did I show you the back? Okay. Side view. Lovely, and it's lovely and light and airy. It's a really hot day today, and I've got a nice breeze. Yeah, really happy with it. It's very me. I've just shown it to my husband, and he's confirmed that yes, it's very me. So that's it. Thank you very much for joining me today. Sorry this will be a long video. I've got about 4 or 5 hours worth of footage that I think I've got to clip down and try and make it make sense. So I hope it doesn't work out too long, but I hope you found it useful or inspiring. If you do ever get doing anything like this, please do share some pictures. I'd love to see other people's thrift flips. I will put my link tree in the description box so you can see, so you can find your way to the Facebook group. So it's the Arty Farty Annie group on Facebook, and there's our free Discord community which is called Arty Fartists. So you're very welcome to join us there and show us what you're creating. Any kind of arts and crafts are very welcome, and we talk about all kinds of other things as well, so especially in the Discord. So okay, I'm going to go now. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye.